Welcome to Crushed Husband. Please like the video and subscribe. Let's begin. You reach a point in life where the silence is louder than any siren. My name is Gideon Voss. I'm 74 years old, retired from a long career in criminal investigations. I live alone in Elmford, a quiet inland town in upstate New York. It's the kind of place where people still wave from their porches, and the grocery store cashier knows your dog's name. My apartment's small, just 2 bedrooms and a dented kettle that whistles like hell, but it's home. Been here 5 years now, ever since Ellen passed. She was my center, always kept things warm, even when the job turned me cold. Stroke took her too fast. One minute we were arguing over the thermostat, and the next, I was a widower with half a cup of coffee going cold in my hand. After she was gone, I kept busy. You learn to. Organized the kitchen like an evidence locker, took up daily walks. Started reading again, actual books, not just case files, but the nights. That's when it catches up with you. I got one son, Marcus, smart kid, was always drawing buildings on the back of diner menus when he was little. He ended up an architect, though now he runs an interior design firm in the city with his wife, Carmen. She's sharp as a tack and twice as pointed. They have 2 boys, Julian and Brett, teenagers now, taller every time I see them, which isn't often. Birthdays, Christmas, maybe Easter if Carmen isn't hosting something else. That distance, it crept up slow. Marcus got busy. I get it. Life moves, but I can't shake the ache that I'm just some faded figure in the background of their lives. They never call just to chat. When we talk, it's Carmen putting me on speaker, asking about property taxes. But a few weeks back, I was sitting in the park, watching a father toss a baseball with his kid. Just a simple game of catch. And I thought, damn, I miss that. I miss being part of something. So I did what maybe only a lonely old man would do. I started imagining what it might be like if we all lived together again. Not under my roof, not theirs. Something new. A family home, not just a building, but a place for connection. Dinners around one table, grandkids who knew my stories without me having to write them down. I started crunching numbers, just like I used to when I'd build a case. I've got the savings. A few cabins upstate I've been renting out, some stock accounts Ellen and I managed over the years, and a bit left from her inheritance. If I liquidated a couple things, we could get something beautiful. A place with land, a river nearby maybe. Peaceful, big enough for everyone. I called Marcus and asked if we could meet, said I had a proposal. When I hung up, I looked around my apartment. Everything was still. I felt scared for the first time in a long while. Not of the risk, but of being told no. Of realizing maybe I'd already become a footnote in their lives. But hope's a stubborn thing, and maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something better. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and paint. New place, big windows, everything stainless and slate-colored like a showroom. I sat by the wall, trying not to fidget with the ceramic cup. My coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago. Carmen walked in first, pointed heels, sharp sunglasses, and a handbag that probably cost more than my fridge. Marcus followed, phone still in hand, murmuring something to a client. "Dad," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Sorry we're late. Carmen had a site meeting run long." "It's fine," I said, waving it off. "Glad you came." Carmen gave me one of her tight, professional smiles. We were curious what this was about. I took a breath, then laid it out plain. I want to buy a house, not for me, for all of us. Something outside of town, on a little land maybe. We'd all live there, together. Marcus blinked. Carmen tilted her head like she was trying to decipher a foreign language. "You mean, like a compound?" she asked. I chuckled. "Not quite, just a home, a shared home. I've been thinking a lot lately about time, about family. I've got savings, rental properties up near Cedar Hollow. Ellen left me some inheritance. I've done the math. I can swing it." Silence hung between us. "That's incredibly generous," Marcus said. "But are you sure that's realistic? I mean, you're on a fixed income, right?" "I'm not broke," I said. "And I'm not impulsive. I've thought this through." Carmen leaned forward, her brow drawn tight. "It's a beautiful idea. It really is. But there are logistics, taxes, legalities. What happens if someone wants to sell later? Who owns what? How's maintenance divided?" I could feel the air shift. That sharpness in her voice, it wasn't curiosity. It was control. "I was thinking we could figure it out together," I said carefully. "Get a lawyer, draw something up. Marcus looked down at the table, then back at me. You know, maybe it's simplest if the property just goes in our name. It keeps things clean for future paperwork, especially if, down the line, there's inheritance stuff. Something in my chest pinched. I looked at my son and saw a man I didn't fully recognize. Still, I nodded slowly. If that's what makes it easier, then fine. I told myself it didn't matter whose name was on the papers. What mattered was the result. Breakfast together, Sunday evenings on a shared porch, grandkids riding bikes in a shared driveway. Over the next month, we toured properties together. Carmen always wore heels, even walking through muddy driveways. Marcus talked specs and price per square foot, while I looked for fireplaces and windows that faced west. We finally found it, a restored lodge nestled along the river, wrap-around porch, pine floors. It looked like something out of a magazine. Carmen loved it. I can wire the funds by Monday, I told the agent. No mortgage, no split. I paid in full. Deed went in Marcus's name. The morning we got the keys, Marcus handed me a bottle of champagne. "You're gonna love it here, Dad," he said. "It'll be good for all of us." I smiled back, trying not to feel the unease tightening behind my ribs. I wanted to believe him. God help me, I did. The first few weeks were good. Better than good, honestly. The house felt alive. Fresh paint on the porch. The smell of Carmen's roasted chicken drifting through the halls. Laughter echoing from upstairs when the boys played video games too loud. For a little while, it felt like I had stepped into the kind of life I thought I'd missed. We had dinners together. Real ones. I carved the turkey the first Sunday night. We all sat down as a family. Julian asked me about a case I'd once worked back in the 80s, and Brett sat across from me, grinning like it was the coolest thing he'd ever heard. Carmen even poured me a glass of red wine without being asked. I went to bed that night thinking, maybe this was what peace felt like. But something shifted not long after that. It started small, subtle things. Meals began showing up on a tray outside my room instead of at the table. At first I figured maybe everyone was just busy, or one of the boys had a late practice. But after the third night, I stopped asking. One morning I came out to the kitchen with a list of ideas for the garden, things Ellen and I used to grow in Elmford. Carmen was at the island, scrolling through a tablet. "I thought I might dig out some space near the fence," I said. "Get some tomatoes in by spring." She didn't even look up. "Oh, actually, we hired a landscape team. They'll be doing some hardscaping work back there. It's kind of a curated design." Curated. That word hung in the air like smoke. I tried not to take it personally. I really did. I still helped where I could, tightened a loose cabinet hinge in the laundry room, replaced a flickering bulb in the foyer. But even then, Carmen said it would have been better to let the contractor handle it. Apparently, I was overstepping. One afternoon, I walked past Marcus's office while he was on the phone. His voice was low, but I caught a few words. "Yeah, we love the house. Couldn't believe we found it. It's really ours now. Ours, not my dad helped us get it, not he bought it. Just ours." I stood there longer than I should have, staring at the closed door. I waited for him to mention me. He didn't. That night, I stayed in my room after dinner. I could hear them laughing downstairs, talking about a vacation to Costa Rica in the summer, Julian asking if he could invite a friend. My name never came up. I looked around my room, just a bed, a dresser, and a chair by the window. All the pictures were still packed in a box I hadn't opened yet. I kept telling myself I'd hang them later, but something in me knew I wouldn't. I thought I had joined something. I thought I had finally come home. But I was starting to realize I was just a guest. And worse, maybe I always had been. 2 weeks before the open house, Carmen came knocking on my door, something she rarely did anymore. "We're hosting a little soiree," she said, voice sweet as pie but sharp behind the eyes. "Just something to introduce the estate to some clients and colleagues. Casual but classy. Think wine and catered bites." I nodded slowly. "You need help setting up?" "Oh no," she laughed, dismissive. "Just be dressed and ready by 6. We've arranged for a suit to be steamed in your closet." I thought navy was less formal than black. When the evening came, I put on the suit. It fit. That was about the only thing that felt right. I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, pressed shirt, polished shoes. I looked like I was going to my own retirement dinner. As I walked into the main room, Carmen met me by the stairs and placed a hand lightly on my arm. "Just a heads up," she whispered. "These are high-profile people, potential clients, some investors. Just keep things light. Let Marcus do the talking, okay?" I wasn't planning on giving a speech, I said, trying to joke. She didn't laugh. People arrived in little herds, handshakes, high heels, and perfume that lingered like fog. The caterers buzzed around with trays. Marcus stood by the fireplace, wearing a slate-gray jacket and that same fake grin he always saved for networking events. Brett and Julian were nowhere to be seen, likely told to stay upstairs. I found myself on the fringe of conversations, smiling politely, offering a hand here and there. At one point, a woman with silver hair and red lipstick asked, "And how do you know Marcus and Carmen?" I smiled, proud. "I'm Marcus's father. Actually, He contributed to the house," Marcus cut in smoothly, stepping between us with a drink in hand. "Helped with some of the upfront capital. We were really lucky." I blinked. "Contributed?" He gave me a sideways look, the kind that says, "Drop it." The woman smiled awkwardly and nodded. "Well, it's a stunning place. You must be so proud of them." I didn't answer. My throat tightened. Later, after most of the guests had moved out to the patio, Marcus and Carmen appeared at my door, together, like they had rehearsed it. "Hey, Dad," Marcus started, leaning against the frame. "Can we talk?" I sat down on the edge of the bed. "Sure." Carmen folded her arms. "We've been thinking a lot about space, about long-term comfort. We don't want things to feel cramped." "Cramped?" I asked quietly. "It's a 6-bedroom house." Marcus cleared his throat. "We found a really beautiful place, just outside of town. A senior community, peaceful, safe. It has everything. And you'd have privacy." "You want me to leave?" I said, finally hearing the words that had been echoing behind every conversation for months. "It's not like that," Carmen said too quickly. "It's just better for everyone." I stood up. My legs felt heavy. "I bought this house." Marcus looked away. "Technically, no, not technically," I said. "I paid for it. Every cent." There was a pause. Carmen's eyes hardened. "You said you wanted a family home. This is our home now, Dad." When they left the room, they closed the door without a word. I started packing that night. Julian and Brett peeked in as I folded a few shirts into a suitcase. Julian smirked. "Going on vacation, Grandpa?" Brett grinned. "About time." I didn't answer. The truth had finally found its way to the surface. This house wasn't mine. It never had been. And the people in it, they weren't my family anymore. They were just tenants of a dream I'd paid for. And now they were evicting the man who built it. I spent the first night in a roadside motel off Route 18, just past the bait shop and across from a half-shuttered gas station. The kind of place with vending machines that eat your dollar and curtains that don't quite close. $49 a night. They gave me a metal key instead of a card. That felt honest, at least. I sat on the edge of the bed, the plastic-wrapped cup of ice melting in my hand. All I had with me was a suitcase, a coat, and a photo of Ellen I kept tucked inside my wallet. She was smiling in it, caught mid-laugh, her hand raised to block the camera. That's how I wanted to remember her. Full of life, not the way she looked in that hospital bed 5 years ago. The room smelled like bleach and something else. Something tired. I didn't sleep much. My body was used to routine, and that had been ripped from me like a bandage. I watched the digital clock change minute by minute, thought about calling Marcus. I didn't. On the third morning, I checked out. The girl at the front desk didn't look up when I slid the key across the counter. I ended up in a neighborhood called Eastcroft, working class, mostly renters. The kind of place where kids rode bikes down cracked sidewalks and no one looked twice at a guy carrying groceries alone. I found a studio above a laundromat. It smelled like detergent and cigarette smoke, but it was cheap and came furnished. One window, one stove, one drawer that stuck when it got humid. I signed the lease and handed over what felt like a humiliating amount of cash. I stood in that little square room and looked around. No family photos, no wood stove, no sound of boys fighting over the TV, just walls and silence. I unpacked slowly, folded things I used to keep in a walk-in closet into a plastic dresser, hung one shirt. The rest I left in the suitcase. Those first days dragged. I walked a lot. 8A whatever was close. I didn't know what I was anymore. Father, guest, burden. One afternoon, I ended up at the park. It wasn't intentional. My feet just took me there. I sat on a bench, fed the birds with half a sandwich I wasn't hungry enough to finish. That's when I heard it. "Gideon." I turned. Arlo Finch, Same crooked grin, same detective's posture, even after all these years. We worked together back in the precinct, the old burglary unit. "Damn," he said, sitting beside me. "Didn't expect to see you outside city limits." We talked. I told him the short version, about the house, Marcus, the exile. He didn't ask for details, just nodded. "Come play cards," he said. "Every Thursday night, community center on Sycamore. Just a bunch of old farts bluffing badly and drinking weak coffee." I almost said no, but something in me needed to say yes. That Thursday, I went. Sat at a table with Arlo and 3 others, retired postman, widower, Navy vet. No one asked me who I used to be, they just dealt me in, and for the first time in weeks I felt the sting in my chest start to lift. Maybe I wasn't finished yet. Maybe I still had a hand to play. It was Arlo who said it first. "You ever actually look at the paperwork for that house?" We were sitting at the community center after cards. The air smelled like old coffee and disinfectant. I just lost a game of Texas Hold'em with a pair of 7s, and Arlo was stacking his chips with that smug little smile of his. "What do you mean?" I asked. "I mean," he said, pausing to sip from his styrofoam cup. "You wrote the check, right? But the deed went in your son's name. You ever see how that transaction was structured?" I stared at him. "I trusted Marcus." Arlo raised an eyebrow. "I didn't ask about trust. I asked about paperwork." Something in my chest tightened. That weekend, Arlo brought in his niece, Rhea. She was in her 30s, sharp as a blade, with a no-nonsense attitude and a laptop that looked like it had seen battle. She met me at the laundromat unit on Sunday afternoon and asked me to dig up every document I had. I handed her a manila folder with the sales agreement, the wire transfer confirmation, and a few printouts Marcus had emailed me back when we first made the purchase. Rhea opened it like she was cracking open a cold case. It took her less than 15 minutes to frown. "You bought this property through a firm called Birchstone Realty?" That's what Marcus said his firm worked with. She leaned back, typing something quickly. "They've had 3 fraud claims filed against them in the past 2 years. 2 settled out of court. 1 still open." I blinked. "Fraud?" She turned the screen to me. "Their title work is sloppy. In some cases, non-existent. There's a lien listed here that was never cleared." I stared at the screen. "You mean the house isn't even cleanly owned?" "Not fully," she said. "There's a good chance the property could be subject to repossession if the original seller or their creditors pursue it." I felt cold all over. "But I paid for it, in full, and your name's not on anything," she said, "which makes you a ghost, legally speaking." My mouth went dry. "Can I do anything?" Rhea nodded. "We can file a claim as a defrauded buyer. We'll argue that you provided full consideration for the purchase and that the title was obtained through misrepresentation. Since Marcus is technically the deed holder, he can't claim to be the victim. You can." I just sat there, listening to the whir of the window fan. The rage didn't come all at once. It showed up quiet, slow, like fog slipping through the cracks in the door. I thought of all the times Carmen brushed me off, the way Marcus looked through me at the open house, the tray left on my bedroom floor like I was some relic too inconvenient to be seen. And now this. "You think they knew?" I asked. Rhea looked up. "That the title was dirty? Possibly, but at minimum, they benefited from it." That night, I went for a walk around the block. No destination, just needed air. I stopped at the corner, leaned against a telephone pole, and looked up at the streetlight. I didn't want revenge. That wasn't who I was, but I did want truth. I wanted a record. I wanted to look in the mirror again and see a man who stood up for himself. So I called Rhea the next morning. "Let's file it," I said. "Let's go after everything I'm owed." There was a long pause. Then she said, "Good." And for the first time since I'd walked out of that big empty house, I felt like I had a name again. Not guest, not burden, not fool. Just Gideon Voss. And I was done being quiet. It was just after noon when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Gideon, it's Carmen." Her voice was tight, polite, but only just. I could hear something frayed behind it, panic trying to dress itself as composure. I didn't say anything. "There's been an issue with the house," she continued. Marcus and I, we got a notice from the bank. They're repossessing." I closed my eyes. I could hear traffic outside my window. the rhythmic hiss of tires on wet pavement. Somewhere downstairs, the washing machines were spinning. "We didn't know the title was compromised," she said quickly. "Marcus swears he had no idea. We're trying to fix it, but we need legal help. Or maybe if you could loan us something just to buy us time." "No." The word came out steady, quiet, final. Carmen paused, like she hadn't really expected me to say it. "Gideon, please," she said, the mask slipping. "They're going to take everything. We'll be out by the end of the month. Julian has school, Brett's applying to colleges. And you're asking me to fix it." "Yes, you're the one who dragged this through court." "I didn't drag anything," I snapped. "I protected what was mine." She went silent. For a second, all I heard was breathing, hers fast, mine calm. "You were supposed to be part of this family," she whispered. I felt something sharp twist in my chest, but I didn't let it show. "No," I said. "You made it clear I wasn't." Click. I hung up before she could answer. A few hours later, Marcus showed up at my door. I opened it just enough to see him, hair a little thinner than I remembered, suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. "Dad," he said, almost breathless. "We need your help." I said nothing. He shifted his weight, that old nervous tic from when he was a boy. "I didn't know about the liens. I didn't. I wouldn't have. You put the house in your name. You told me it was for simplicity." "It was. I thought," he looked down. "I thought we had time to fix the title later." "You didn't think at all," I said. "You took my money, my trust, and you threw me out like a stranger." He looked up. "I'm your son." "You were." That hit him. He blinked, stunned, like he was just now realizing this wasn't about the house or the money. It was about what had broken underneath it all. "Please," he said, "don't do this." I started to shut the door. "We're losing everything," he added. "You chose that," I said. And then I closed the door. The next day Carmen came herself. She was dressed down, no makeup, no heels. Her eyes looked tired. She didn't even ask to come in. "We just need somewhere to stay," she said softly. "For a little while, until we figure things out." I stood in the doorway and stared at her. "You want to stay here?" I said. "With me. Just until we're back on our feet. You have space, don't you?" "I had space in that house," I said. "I bought it." "And you asked me to leave it." "That wasn't," she started, but I held up my hand. "I'm not your safety net anymore." Her eyes glistened, but I saw no regret in them, only desperation. "Please, Gideon," she whispered. I shut the door without another word. This time, I didn't hesitate. This time, it felt like the right kind of silence. The call came just after breakfast on a Tuesday. I'd just finished my eggs and was rinsing the plate when my phone buzzed on the counter. "Gideon, it's Rhea." I dried my hands on a dish towel. "Yeah?" She didn't draw it out. "We won. Judge ruled in favor of the fraud claim. You're getting a partial settlement. Not everything, but a sizable chunk." I leaned against the counter and let that sink in. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I said, then smiled. "Yeah, I think I am." The next few weeks moved quick. The payout was less than what I'd put into that house, but more than I expected to get back. Enough for a fresh start. Rhea told me I could push for damages or pursue further litigation against Marcus personally, but I told her no. "I'm not interested in ruining him," I said. "I just wanted my piece of the truth back." With her help, I found a little place near Maple Lake, a modest one-story with a screened porch and a backyard that backed into woods. No marble countertops or open-concept kitchen, just peace and good plumbing, the kind of place Ellen would have picked out with her eyes closed. I moved in quietly. No celebration, no housewarming, but that first night, I stood on the back porch with a cup of coffee and watched the sun go down behind the tree line. The wind rustled the leaves, and for the first time in what felt like years, I exhaled without heaviness in my chest. Over time, the neighborhood began to feel like home. A retired nurse lived across the street. Next door was a guy named Harris, always fixing something in his garage and inviting me over for barbecue. People waved. Nobody asked what I used to do or what had brought me here. A few months in, I started volunteering at the community center in town. They ran a mentorship program for local teens, kids dealing with stuff I recognized all too well. Broken homes, anger that lived in their bones. Most of them didn't trust easily, neither did I. But we got there. One kid, Darnell, reminded me of Marcus when he was young. Smart, quiet. a little too good at pretending nothing got to him. We played chess most Thursdays. He never let me win. Word got around about Marcus and Carmen. The house was gone, of course, repossessed. The firm folded not long after. I heard he tried starting something new, but it never caught traction. Last I heard, he was working odd jobs, consulting here and there, nothing steady. Carmen took cleaning gigs. People talk, even when they think they're being discreet. Then one afternoon, I stepped outside to get the mail and froze mid-step. Marcus was across the street, not close, but close enough to see clearly. He looked thinner, older than he should. He didn't cross the road, didn't wave. He just stood there for a beat, his eyes meeting mine, and gave a slow, tired nod. I returned it. That was all. No words, no anger. Just two men who once shared a name and a history now too heavy to speak aloud. He walked on. I stood there for a while longer, the mail forgotten in my hand, the sky dimming to a soft amber. And in that stillness, I felt it settle inside me. Not revenge, not regret, just peace. They had their story. Now I had mine. 6 months later, I barely recognized the man I used to be. Mornings at the lake house start slow. A warm cup of black coffee, the newspaper folded just so, and the soft chatter of robins outside my kitchen window. I take my time now. No schedules, no tension in my shoulders, just quiet. Mondays and Wednesdays, I take a painting class at the recreation center. I'm not good, not by any stretch, but there's something calming about mixing colors and trying to turn blank canvas into something that almost looks like memory. Ellen would have loved the sunflowers I tried last week, even if they ended up looking more like lopsided pancakes. Thursdays, I volunteer at the youth center in town. They've got this mentorship program for kids who've had a rough start, run-ins with the law, family stuff, school problems. I sit with them in the back room, help with homework, listen to whatever they want to say, or don't. Some of them just need to be heard. Some need someone to tell them the world doesn't have to stay the way it is. One kid, Reese, 16, chip on his shoulder the size of a mountain, asked me last week if I had kids. Had, I told him. Not anymore. He looked confused. They die? I shook my head. Not exactly. He didn't press, just nodded once, like he understood in some way most grown-ups never will. The truth is, I don't check on Marcus or Carmen anymore. Whatever job he's holding down, wherever she's scrubbing floors now, that's not my concern. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. I just don't owe them anything anymore. That chapter's closed. And the funny thing is, without all that weight, I finally feel light, free. The neighbors here have become my people. Harris from next door still invites me over for ribs on Saturdays. There's a retired librarian 2 doors down who brings me crossword books she's already finished. I get birthday cards now, holiday invites. I laugh more. There's no blood here, no shared DNA, but it feels more like family than anything I've had in years. This afternoon, I sat on the porch with a cold glass of iced tea, watching the sun slide down toward the lake. The sky was gold, streaked with orange and purple, and the air had that late summer sweetness in it. My back didn't ache the way it used to. Maybe it was the chair, maybe it was the peace. A kid from the neighborhood biked past, waved, and I waved back. And for the first time in my life, I didn't wonder what I could have done differently. I didn't replay conversations, I didn't mourn what I lost. I just sat there, content. Not because I got everything I wanted, but because I finally learned how to let go of what never truly was. And as the sun dipped behind the trees, casting the porch in soft light, I said it aloud. Not for anyone else, just for me. This is the life I was meant to live.